There we go. Okay, so now I got the recording started. Thank you all for joining me today. I'm glad that so many of you are at least willing to give me your time to listen to an update on H&H, what's going on. My goal is to kind of inform you to what is happening, what are the opportunities, to what is the current status in Germany, what do I hear from my colleagues there, to my guess of where this will all go. Partly, it's very different than what we're experiencing here in the US. So that's one thing I want to make sure that people are understanding and hearing the difference. Everybody should be seeing my screen at this time. Is that correct? I'll take the silence as a yes. There is, if you don't feel like actually speaking, there is a chat feature on the platform. So please go ahead and use the chat. I'll have that window open on the side as well, so I can see any questions that you type in. You can send it to me personally, or you can send it to everybody. So that way you can ask the questions as well. The first thing I want to start with is H&H is going on. We are planning to open H&H on schedule. It is no changes in the dates as far as what we had planned for 2021 to begin with. They are full go ahead to do that. What does that mean? So I think first, before I get into the specifics on H&H, let me kind of just give you a general overview of coronavirus in Germany, the way the Germans are looking at trade shows and the way the Germans are treating trade shows, and just talk about travel around Cologne at the moment as a place to start. And then we'll look specifically at the changes that we're doing in our exhibition and what changes we are going to be taking place at H&H to ensure a productive experience for everybody. The first thing I would say is the German government actually recognizes trade shows as essential to business, and that is essential to them as a state, meaning the state as a country. So the federal government has put out repeated statements now that trade shows are essential to the economy. Trade shows are deemed essential business travel, and you may travel to and from Germany without quarantine with certain guidelines. The guidelines are actually enforced by the different regional states within Germany. Koelnmesse is within Northwest Rhine-Fallen, that which us and Dusseldorf are the two major trade show cities that are within that region. And then they have rules so that if you travel into the region, right now it is, if you read it, you're going to find that it probably says it's a 10-day mandatory quarantine upon entry. And then you got to find the fine print, except if you're there for essential business travel, which is trade shows. You are allowed to enter the region with a negative COVID test that is less than 24 hours old, meaning on Monday, I go take the test in the day. I might get it back Tuesday morning. If you need obviously a quick return on the results. Tuesday night, I can get on my plane because I've got my negative COVID test. Arrive in Germany Wednesday morning. I could show them my negative COVID test. I go to my hotel. I show my negative COVID test. I can check in. I can do everything with no quarantining necessary. Where this is extremely different than the US is right now, the US does not have a united voice on trade shows. We don't even have a voice in our federal government on trade shows. And at this point, there's no trade shows in America. We're not able to open trade shows here. Trade shows have been happening in Germany for the last month and a half already, from small to large in scale. I do have a video that if I can show at the end if people are interested. It's a sister city to the north of us. It's in a town called Dusseldorf. It's a competitor and friends of ours, we'll call them. They're about 30 minutes north of us. They opened up this caravan salon, Dusseldorf, and it's an RVing camping show. It's open to the public. You can actually see a little bit here from their floor plan. It's quite a large show. They had 108,000 visitors over I think it's a 5-day window. It was never cited in any news reports or anywhere as being a super spreader event or an outbreak. The event happened, it worked. It was smaller than it typically has been in the past, but it operated safely and everyone was happy on their way. And it's a little short 3-minute video. And they take you through, as I said, we could watch it at the end if you folks are interested, where you're physically walking through and just seeing what it looks like in the show. And I'm going to go through some of these things of what we're going to specifically do at Koelnmesse to make a difference. I'm going to pause there for a moment Any question? Oh, let me I take that back before I pause. Living in Germany at the moment and traveling around Germany, mandatory face masks. Everyone wears face masks. Everybody on public transportation are required to wear face masks. If you get caught without one, it's a 250 € fine on the spot. They don't play around. It's not. They're very strict with it. If you go into a store without a mask, I believe that level of fine is 150 €. There's another level of fines if you're caught somewhere else, and I'll have to check on that where it is. It's like another level of a 50 € fine about face masks as well. So they are wearing face masks extensively. Restaurants are open similar to here in Illinois, outdoor dining, limited indoor dining. Um, Depending on the company, some people are back in the office, some people aren't in the office. It kind of varies on the institution and the size of their offices. So there's a definite returning or continuing business. There's a couple of questions here that have just popped in. Thank you, Mark, for them. Will the hotels be briefed on the rules for visitors? Is that question related to the no quarantine period? If that's what it is, Mark, just don't need to type in if I got that right. This is being set out by the federal ministry and then the local states. So I'm going to say absolutely yes, the hotels are briefed in all of this. Some hotels, I'm told, and I would check with your individual hotels that you may book, is that they are also going to ask and look for that negative COVID test to allow you to check in and to have your room. So that way everyone checking in is showing a negative COVID test. What about cancellation policies for travel/hotel bookings should you fail the test? Good question. Individual hotels. Unfortunately, that's not something Koelnmesse unfortunately gets in the middle of, since it's very different than the US where we don't control the hotel blocks like a lot of show organizers do here. I would greatly understand and know where you're booking is the best way to put it. So that's something that's unfortunately a little bit outside of our control. Every hotel's a little different. Every brand's a little different when it comes to that. Is there enough time when traveling from the US to get a positive test result and then catch an evening flight from the West Coast? So positive, I'm assuming you mean by a negative result, meaning that you can travel. From my understanding of the test, you can get a rapid 24-hour return on the type of test. So I would say yes, because if I take a test on Monday, I should have it back Tuesday, meaning I can travel Tuesday afternoon, like out of Chicago here, for example. I take a 5:50, or excuse me, it's an afternoon flight. I take off at like 2:30 in the afternoon, and I land at like 5:30 in the morning. So that test is now, when I get there, I'm still under that 48-hour time limit. Some of the other things I would also bring up that we're seeing is we're still talking about something that's the end of March. We are, let's see, we're in October, right? So we're November, December, January, February, March. We're 5 months away, almost just short of a couple of days, almost 5 months away from the opening day of this event. What's going to happen in the next 5 months? Anyone's guess. Anything from, does Pfizer actually come out with a vaccine that starts vaccinating people that helps? Does testing get better and cheaper? To United this week is launching in conjunction with the World Health Organization, another UN body. There's a global app, basically a COVID travel pass or a health travel pass with certified laboratories that are linked into the system, where you'll be able to get tested before you come to the airport or even at the airport, not for free. And they'll get the results back in time before you get on that flight, and that system will be updated and used around the world as your global health passport. It is being currently tested. They just launched it this week on flights from Newark, New Jersey to London Heathrow. And then there's a few different airlines also playing with similar concepts with flights to Hawaii. So I think as we move forward, all of this is going to only improve, get easier, get simpler, and then depending on healthcare plans or cost, and get even easier to deal with. Looks like maybe I got that question for you. Thank you for those questions, Mark. I'll stop there for a moment. Any questions on travel, hotels, kind of that basic getting to Cologne, and getting there to visit or exhibit. On the call today, I know we have folks from both sides of the of that aisle, some visitors, potential visitors, and current and potential exhibitors. Any questions so far? Okay, let me step you through some of the plans of what this now means for H+H. You should be seeing my screen here. And let's see if they actually have updated the hall plan yet. They actually have not even updated our website yet. Many of you would have received an email directly from Germany. I think it was on Monday it came out, that we're changing facilities. And so what we're doing is traditionally folks have been used to us using buildings 2 and building 3 and having our south and west entrance. For folks that were in that North American group, we were upstairs here in 3.2. Coming for this new year to one with help, because one of the requirements we're going to do is booths are going to be spaced at a greater distance. Aisles are going to be spaced at a greater distance. So what does that mean? Booths are going to be, the aisles will be no less than 5 meters wide. So if anyone remembers H&H, some of these aisles were, well, let's talk in feet. Make it easier for you, I apologize. So booths, the aisles will be no less than about 18 feet wide. Some of you, when you've been there, they've maybe been 10. Some of these things are even like 6 feet wide. So there's a part of the regulations to keep everyone safe is no less than 5 meters, so just short of 20 feet, will be required between aisles. So all of that spacing is going to make, we can't fit in the old buildings anymore because the exhibiting demands so far. One of the questions that was emailed in earlier was, what are the major companies doing? A Gutermann, Prim, Lano Grossa, any of those kinds of companies. All still on board, all have signed off on the plans and are ready to engage on the show. So what we're doing is we're actually going to move the entire show into building 3. And from my understanding, it'll spread over definitely 2 of the floors. I don't believe we're going to expand onto the 3rd floor. I'm waiting for a little bit of an update and verification on how we're physically going to end up fitting in there. But the whole show, and now the floors that you can see physically by the building, they're a lot larger. They're bigger. They're, if anything, also, they're actually easier to get into because now we can use our east entrance, which many of you have walked. The hotels are right in this area. You would walk across through kind of the under the belly to get to that west entrance. Now you just come right in the east entrance and you're there. The south entrance will still be used to get into here. So the spacing will just be a lot bigger and easier. The other requirement, and we'll kind of look at how this gets impacted, is the booth sizes. We'll get there shortly. Some of the other changes that you're physically going to see different at Koelnmesse, and we're going to have some photos we can look at in shortly here, is the overall structure of our shows. No longer will there be ticket agents. We won't have on-site registration. It will all be done via your mobile app. We'll encourage people to do it in advance, or you pull out your phone and you stand off in the corner and you do it all by yourself on your phone. We still have the turnstiles. You'll still scan that code as your ticket, and then the machine, it looks like, is going to print a badge for you to wear. What's new is that that's going to be the same for exhibitors. Exhibitors will be given codes to then register their personnel, and then their personnel will go through the same thing, scan, get a ticket, and then they can wear their ticket. Other things that you'll see physically different. Let me see if I can bring up the photo here real quick. Here it is. These new entry systems, where if you've been there in the past, we've done bag checking, where we've had security officers looking through bags to inspect just to make sure to keep everybody safe. We now have these scanning systems that, I'll call it science, you can call it magic, somehow scan to make sure you're not carrying anything that can not keep us safe. What I do understand that these are not temperature checking machines. So I don't want you to think that we're scanning temperatures of people. From my understanding of it, our friends in Germany take that topic very differently, and the privacy laws are very stringent, I think, and they're not very comfortable with that. So right now we do not have a temperature scanning system involved in the space. The other physical changes that you're going to see is some sort of question coming here. I'll back up to some of the questions here in a moment. Masks are 100% required at the show. so that everyone will be wearing one. If you don't come with one, we will have some to give away, just like kind of retail does here in America as well. Other physical changes are going to be things like around our coat check. I'll be honest, I don't know how it actually is going to work, but it's supposed to be a lot less contact based and just to create less congestion and to make it easier and more flowing. Fortunately, in Cologne, we have 2 events next month, and then we have 3 large shows that are in January, 2 shows in February, a very large dental show, another large food manufacturing show, all happening before we get to H+H. So any system where we kind of think that, how does this going to work? What does this actually look like? There's plenty of opportunity for us to learn how to use it, to get demos on how to use it, and then anything that's really not that efficient and should be maybe made a little easier, we can make those small tweaks as we move along. I'll stop there for a moment. Give you a chance. I'm going to back up to some of the questions here. As you can see here, some photos again of how we're doing the aisles. If an aisle cannot be kept to a certain distance, they are going to be making them one-way aisles, kind of like the supermarkets around in my area did. Here's like a special event area. Again, asking, so this way we keep people distant. And we're going to talk and look at exhibiting standards. So this is an example inside someone's booth and some of the protocols that we're going to be asking people to take. I'm going to take a look here through some of the questions and make sure we don't get too far ahead. Masks are required all the time when walking around the city and outdoors even. This came from Nikki. Great question. I will get back to you. I don't know. I know my Meta Peterson is on the call here today. Let me see if she's still on. Meta, if you are, can you unmute? Do you know the answer to that question?
Yeah, hi everybody, I'm Meta. Sorry, would you mind repeating the question?
When you're walking around Cologne City, in free public space area, like hanging out in front of the cathedral, just walking, do you need to wear a face mask?
I am guessing yes. I do believe that face masks are required. I mean, naturally, I'm located in Chicago, so I've not been to Germany recently, but from what I've read, face masks are required in all public places. Just walking around town.
Thank you. I will re-verify that. I'll call one of my friends over there and just say, what are you doing? What's life like? And we'll verify that, but we'll, as I say, some of this, we're not going to have all the answers, and we will come back to you and publish answers as we get them. The next question that came in from Christina, you had asked about the number of exhibitors that will be attending. Is it any significantly less or any significant changes? The answer to that question is nothing of significance. If I look at my own client list that we have, normally we have about 30 to 35 companies from North America. I've received 1 cancellation to date. If we use a show that takes place a little bit before this for the hardware industry sector, normally in 2020, before the cancellation, we were slated to have almost 3,200 exhibiting companies. Currently going into the 2020 show, which is coming because it's coming back in end of February, we have 2,200. So in some respect, we lost a lot of companies, 1,000 companies, yes, but it's still 2,200 companies. So it's a relatively small percentage of the overall attendance audience. For that show, also in some of the numbers that they're reporting, we were going to be about 60,000 or 70,000 square meters of total exhibit space, and it's only dropped by about 7,000 or 8,000 square meters of exhibit space. So by large, I think, and you guys can chime in and unmute yourselves, my hardware and tool, my lawn and garden, our food category shows, there's pent-up demand and interest to find products. So companies are hankering for an opportunity on both sides of the aisle to see product, touch product, and to feel more connected once again. And the part in Germany where they've been able to showcase, and we have live examples of them being able to do it safely, is a very positive scene. So I think you'll see it. And from the few folks I have talked to, we're here in the crafting and the yarn industries, retailers have maybe struggled, some of the small stores, but in general, people have been home being more crafty. whether it's food crafts or soft crafts. People have just had time at home. So it seems to be doing okay. Let me move on to the next question here. Do you have a list of retailers, distributors committed to attend the show? Unfortunately, we do not at this point. And that's a very hard thing. Sometimes we can get a list of the names of the companies that are coming, but in general, we don't. Cologne is very sensitive about publishing that stuff a lot of times because of the privacy laws. There's a lot of restrictions around what we are allowed to publish and say to the show. But from what we have seen so far, even as they say, as we point to the events that have been happening, they are coming. To speak to the potential impact, the reality of it all, right? So I'm a salesperson. I'm supposed to be positive. My boss is on the phone. I have to be positive of where this is going. In the same breath, I don't want to give disinformation. Traditionally, H+H would see about 16,000 people. Hold on, let me bring this up for you. Okay, in our last, here it is, 16,500 people is what came to the 2019 event. Of that, it's about, as you can see here, 42% of it. When we say abroad, that means outside of Germany. I'm not very good at math, so I'm just going to go 60-40. I'll even, let's even make it easier because I'm really not good at math. Let's just call it a 50-50 split. And if we drop it down to 16,000 visitors, if 50% is coming from Germany and if 50% show up, that's still 8,000 people coming to the show. Do I think it's going to be that small? No. Because that would be a very dramatic hit. And that's saying that nobody from France, nobody from Italy, not one person from any of these places are going to come, which we know. And what we've been seeing in the way they've been traveling in Europe, the way they took their summer holidays, the feedback we're getting as we're going into our candy shows and our furniture shows, it doesn't seem to be the case. The Europeans are willing to travel. Will we be missing someone from Australia? Hey, very good chance. Will there be some people missing from the United States? Highly probable. And some of it goes down to just corporate travel restrictions for companies like, if you deal with large mass merchants like a Michaels or a Hobby Lobby, they probably have corporate policies that aren't going to allow them to travel still at this point. But yet, as much as I think that in my hardware and tool sector, many of you might know a company called Do It Best. They're sending 2 buyers to the hardware show in February from Indianapolis. I never thought in a million years, but they're coming. And as we get closer, I think we'll have a little bit also better expectation. And again, as I say, 5 months out, we haven't even opened up registration yet. I couldn't even tell you who's going to register because it hasn't started. That's something that we start getting more information on as we get to like that 3-month inward kind of balance. The only benefit I can ever say is sometimes best place to open up a coffee shop is next to Starbucks because they do a lot of marketing to make sure people are coming in. And let's at least offer something different with companies like Gutermann still planning to do the types of exhibits that they've done in the past. They're going to make sure the message gets out for their customers to come see them, or Elena Grossa, or Prim, or Knitting Fever, or such companies who also invest heavily to make sure people are coming. Let me move down to the next question here. Have you thought about having a 2-day show instead of a 3-day show? At this point, Jill, not on this event. It hasn't been something that we've been pushed by many exhibitors to want to have. It just hasn't been something of a conversation. The only place I've seen that come in, Koelnmesse does produce some events that are 5-day shows, and they did contract down to maybe a 4-day cycle. They took off 1 day because they're so long, because it's such a long extended period. But this event I've not seen that question come up before. Do we have to provide plexiglass? I will come back to you on the plexiglass shields, Jim, and on booth design. So if you don't hear me, please put it in again, but I want to get in. We'll show some pictures on booth design. You need to wear a face mask on 1.5 meters. Okay, so Leslie, oh, yeah, she put that in there. Thank you, Leslie. That's another one of my colleagues. I didn't realize she was on the call about the mask. So we'll get into all of that here in just a moment about distance. So one of the challenges we're going to have is in any given booth, you must keep 1.5 meters of distance from each other.
You all right?
If someone's mic, hold on, let
I'm
me
sorry.
see.
I'm listening to a webinar thing as well.
Mute. I got him. There we go. So, and then you have cubic space. So if you take a 12 square meter booth, technically going forward for Koelnmesse to be COVID compliant, all booths must be 16 square meters. We're not forcing, we hope that you would exhibit and take on more space. But if it's something that's not possible, I'm going to show you something that we're using from our hardware fair. Give me a moment to find it. It's going. There it goes. Can everyone see this example from our hardware fair? Okay, I'm going to take the quietness as a yes. No one's complaining they can't see. So what they're going to do is, so this is an example of a 12 square meter booth. They're going to have a red strip placed in front of it. Because you paid for 12 square meters, the show is going to give this extra meter so that customers can step off the aisle and stand in the red meter if they want to have a meeting, so that they're not congesting the aisle. In a 16 square meter space, you will be allowed 4 people at any given time. So basically 2 employees, 2 customers. Then, and then how are we monitoring this? There's no, it's going to be people walking around, and it's not a do it once, get in trouble, you close your booth. It's, hey, please, there's going to be people monitoring and asking you to please come compliant. Hey, you have too many people in your booth. Can you move something? Can you move a meeting somewhere else? Can you schedule this meeting? Can you ask the guests to come back at a different time to keep companies in compliance? If people are repeatedly breaking the rules, and just like we have here, then we'll have to take the situation if exhibitors are repeatedly causing an offense to the situation. Once you're inside that space, like if you have a round table here, for example, here, go to these pictures for a second. So when you're inside the space, you will be required, so that if you can't maintain 1.5 meters in distance, like these people cannot maintain it in the meeting space, then a plexiglass shield will be required to be in the space and be the barrier between those 2 people, because they're under 1.5 square meters in distance to each other. Is this an example? That's a bad example. This is a food service one. If you're a booth that's under 16 square meters, and they give you that free kind of meter in front of you, then what they're saying is that meter is not a space to be exhibited on. Let me come back to PowerPoint here. So your booth will be built on the 12 square meters. Your items you can display are on the 12 square meters. This has to remain open because you didn't pay for the space. You can't use it for marketing or exhibiting purposes. Or if you're this company, now you're coming compliance and you don't have to worry about that. But then your information counter can't be up here on the edge of the booth. It has to be set in because people need the space to come in off the aisle. Someone had asked about, again, another example of the plexiglass shields that are going to be needed between, again, if you cannot maintain a 1.5 meter distance between you and the person that you're meeting with. Some people in their booth might take a long table, that's a meter length table. You sit at one end and they sit at the other. Now you don't need a plexiglass shield because you have the distance. And I think I have, so here you can see, it's not the greatest picture, but how the counter's set in off the aisle. It's got the plexiglass shield up top and how they're managing that. Example of a meeting room and what they're doing to maintain that distance. And I don't know where here, this table is big enough. You don't see a plastic shield needed. So there's no one absolute fast answer of how to build or manage or set up your booth, because there's so many variables of how you want to manage and utilize your workspace. Part of this, from what I understand, all exhibitors are going to be, well, one of the features that we're going to have, let me back up a moment to that, is something called eGuard. eGuard is a new system that we have, and it's going to heat map the show floors and heat map our buildings, so that essentially you'll be able to look at our buildings in a color-coded fashion and see red light, green light, yellow light. When it's red, that means there's high traffic, high congestion. You may choose not to go into that zone. When it's green, hey, traffic is light. And that will be a system that will be within one of our show applications that people can download. So the part of it also is going to be is exhibitors are going to be asked to scan people who come into their booth and leave their booth, partly for contact tracing. And then I believe we understand it'll also be part of our lead retrieval system. And then all of these things we understand will be part of one large show application that you will have as an exhibitor, where parts are coming. We've seen the different pieces in action, where we have time to kind of get the piece. What I have on the screen now for you, this is a very typical type of booth that a lot of you get. This is our, I think our Tokyo stand. And as you can see the way they did it here, they have the one table, the plexiglass shield. They didn't use information counters. So it's very open. And it's so you can kind of see how, in some breaths, it doesn't look any different from a normal trade show booth. It looks like what you've always kind of had. The other steps of differences are going to be in sanitation. Exhibitors are going to be required to have hand sanitizing in their booth to provide to themselves and their guests. You're also going to be asked and required to disinfect in between your guests at the table. So wiping down your table, wiping down. When it comes to soft crafts, I actually have to say I don't really know what you're expected to do or what you could even do. But if you had hard goods, if you had knitting needles, to wipe down your knitting needles between guests and handing it out. When it comes to the fabrics, I'll be honest, it escapes me of what you would actually do when it comes to that. I'll pause here for a moment. Any questions on the exhibit and or exhibiting or exhibit operations? I must be doing such a wonderful job getting everyone's questions answered. What in these photos that we're sharing with you are photos that have been taken. We have a village called the E-Safe Village, and it's been running this whole month, where booth builders are coming in to see what they need to learn and how they'll design booths if they're outside contractors, local exhibitors, media have been coming in and to see what we're doing. It's also allowing us opportunities to test some of the technologies as we get ready to roll them out next month. One of the things like food, you can still serve food in your booth. You just can't have open buffets. Not that any of you guys have ever done that, but if you guys remember the Guterman booth that has quite a bit of food and the whole kitchen going in the back, they'll still have food, they'll still have bars, but it'll be served not just out for people to graze on, individually wrapped, so you can do things differently. Things like parties, unfortunately, for this upcoming show, that great party that we all like to attend together, that party at this time will not be scheduled to happen. Exhibitor booth parties will not happen this year as well. Jim is asking how many people he can have at his booth at any one time is a maximum of 4. It's based on size. So a typical 12 square meter booth, yes, you'll be capped at 4 people. And because it is essentially 4, because you're getting that free meter along the front, that's going to be part of your booth. We'll say quote unquote, because it counts as the space to put people in. So on a 16 square meter booth, it's 4 people, or 4 square meters per person is the allocated space. you can, on the website, as I say, just Monday, they changed the way the building plan is going to work. A lot of this be safe stuff that I have gone through right on the front of our website, you can come back to learn more, and you can get details on a lot of these different measures, and they're consistently updating this. A lot of these exhibit guidelines, as that I just went through, are right here on the website for you to go through and be able to look at your own pace and at your own leisure. When it comes to booth construction, because just about everyone uses Koelnmesse service for their booth construction. Oh, sorry, wrong link. So anyone that uses Vortex, they have attended this. They were just there. That's who actually provided us with these photos. They will be abreast of how to design and make recommendations on how to update your booth and your layout of your booth. For folks that use my friend Robert, I'm drawing a blank on his company name at the moment. He's also attended, so he can advise on how to update and change. Pardon?
Darren, they're called Implemental, Robert's
Thank you.
company.
Thank you. So they also have been partnering on coming to the village so they can build booths effectively for people. But as I say, the majority of you use our Koelnmesse system. And when you go to our Koelnmesse system, they have a couple of turnkey booths that are all set, what we call our Be Safe package. Or if you still like the more open style, which as many of you will use our Amsterdam booth. Let's click on it. Let's just use it real quick here for a moment. And then they have a whole category of Be Safe products. And in here, you'll find that information counter, like we just talked about, like a meeting counter where it's big enough to have stools on both sides. You might want to hang this booth design doesn't really lend itself to the plexiglass hanging. So a different booth design that would work. Here's your meeting table with protection and so on, all the way down to you can get the hand sanitizer. That if you get these types of a freestanding one or one mounted to the wall, you can also get the hand sanitizer from them. I'm also told through different shops that we'll have on site, you'll be able to purchase disinfectant. You can go to the local supermarket. You'll be able to buy also additional hand sanitizers that if you just want small bottles in your booth. I don't know if I would necessarily recommend shipping that stuff in from here from North America, only because it might cause havoc with your import paperwork, importing chemicals. It might cause problems for that paperwork versus just product. Or if you're going to lug it on planes with you, I would just be somewhat cautious between God forbid that bottle splits open in your bag. That's a whole lot of sanitizer going all over your clothes or sometimes your products. So I would kind of keep that in mind. I got a bunch of questions here from Nathan. Thank you. Regarding the 4 persons in a booth, there were a few pictures that showed a plexiglass dividers. If this is the case and there is a space that can accommodate 2, does this allow more than in the booth with the divider? Okay, so what the divider does is, so in any cubic space, they want no more than 4 square meters per person. So in 8 square meters of space, you can have 2 people. In 16 square meters of space, you can have 4 people. That's a regulation 1. The second regulation is if you are going to be less than 1.5 meters, what is that, about 6 feet or 3 or 5 feet, you need to have a plexiglass shield between you and that person. So you and I could stand across at each other in the booth. And as long as we keep 1.5 meters distance between us, we don't need a plexiglass shield. If I want to get real close and personal, we want to sit next to it at a small table and talk about product and feel it. They then want a shield between your face and their face, is how we're understanding these rules. So it doesn't necessarily allow more people in the cubic space. It just allows you to close the distance between you and the person with you. I will say, when you look at some of these photos, for example, of a meeting room and a table. So you're on this side, your guests are on this side. They are making the assumption that these 2 people don't need a shield between them because they're together. And the same for this side. The two employees don't need a shield between them because they are together. It's like a family. So and a lot of this is how we're interpreting it and dealing with it now. And I can give you much better answers of what this actually looks like when our Cologne, our first trade fair opens, that puts this actually to work. There's a guest event that takes place. So each time we'll really physically see it. When you look at the video, if I could show at the end, the Dusseldorf trade show, because it was the type of show, just didn't lend itself to needing those types of restrictions, only because they had it's RVs and camping, so things are just very large. It wasn't as up close and personal. You did see some information counters, I think, in the video that show the plexiglass shield, but again, because a person's showing a car, you and I can stand far enough apart and we can talk about the car very easily without enclosing in that personal space. Part of the additional question, therefore, we are discussing products with one of 4 people allowed in the space. Yes, because this would be the entire allotment in our booth. Nathan, I think I got, wait, I know, often a person's traveling with family, with 2-person group, can they both approach?
Maybe I'll just quickly speak to help clarify that. So
Yeah,
I
please go
know that's the case, but again, if you're looking at the booth at 12 square meters and we're saying 4 people, I'm looking at the picture on your screen seeing 4 people. That means that if there was the plexiglass display piece up on the other corner of your booth, that somebody was demonstrating pieces, then only those 4 people, even though they're only occupying one corner of the booth. That's what I'm wondering, is trying to understand the challenge between having the meeting with 2 people that are okay being with each other and then using that space to engage with another person when they're still divided amongst or away from each other,
I'll be honest, it's my personal feeling, it's good gray zone. The booth we're looking at now on the picture is a little hard to deal with because this is bigger. It's 4 meters by 4 meters. Each one of these wall panels that you see is a meter. So it gives a little bit of a false perception of how it physically lays out. When you're 4 meters wide, so you're this wide, but you're 1 less deep, you're only 3 deep, is the typical configuration for a number of you. Yes, if you're in this side, so like your counter, this first strip here, can I draw on this thing? Let me see if I can draw on this. Maybe this will make it a little bit, hopefully better for me to explain. So this space here, that I'm shaving in this bad color gray that you may not see. Can you get a different color? Yeah, there we go. Wait. Yellow. There we go. Maybe this is easier to see. So this color here is really not part of your booth, but like if a customer's standing here and then your info counter is here, right? And that's got a plexiglass shield. So this customer can talk to you here, right? Or the 2 of them, maybe there's 2 people together. I guess in theory, they can talk to you here. This meeting table could be over on this side. And then, yes, you can be talking together. Like maybe there's 2 bar stools on one side. As I say, I have a feeling it's going to be a gray zone and hard to answer, but
that's good enough. I was just kind of curious, and that's kind of what I'm looking for, just trying to decide when you're engaging with a consumer, and even if there's 4 in the booth, pretty soon you're at 6. And so then if you're less staffing the space or you're adding more space, no matter what, like even if you had a meeting chair, as long as there's 2 people that are okay being together and they enter your space, all of a sudden someone has to leave your booth, right? Like, hey, okay, employee, you got to go out because we actually had 2 people that were comfortable being together, even though they're only occupying one corner of let's say it's a 4 meter by 4 meter booth, then that would seem very like that actually just doesn't work for business as a whole.
And it's fluid is the other piece. At the end of the day, this is a very fluid situation. That we realize that it's going to be constant kind of, if 1 minute there's, it's like, and that's where it's kind of hard. Like 1 minute you have 4 people in your booth. Next minute you have 2. The next minute you have 5. Then that person really didn't stay. It's like, do you put your toe in? Do you put your toe out? Like, put your right foot in, put your right foot out. Let's do the hokey pokey, everybody. There's a little bit of this gray zone of how the fluidness is really going to work.
I think you're doing a great job with this. It looks like there's been a lot of thought, and it seems like it's coming across fairly simple with what we're going to be needing to do. So
I really do believe so. I think honestly, the greatest challenge is going to be what I call the mind game. I think physically we have all the tools in place to operate a show safely. We have all of the current best guidelines with a cohesive voice from federal government to local government through health ministries are all pointing in one direction, which makes life a lot easier. Um, at home here in the US side, at least, it ain't that easy because we're even within states, they can't point in one direction together of what we want to do to get things done. So I think that makes it easier than when it comes to H&H, that we have many opportunities to showcase and show that it does work, and that we've already had one, Dusseldorf, and 108,000 people got together over 5 days, and there was no massive change in COVID infections. I mean, we've had smaller events here in certain states that had more infections in 48 hours than some countries did. So they seem to be, it seems to be working that we can still do business, and convincing people that it's safe to get on planes, to come. It'll be different. Yeah. Maybe get an Airbnb. You might eat a few more meals in your room versus sitting in a restaurant. I'll watch a little bit more. Thank God Netflix still works there, and I can watch my movie and eat my gyro in my room at night, and I'll miss the party a little bit. That party's always fun to hang out with everyone, but I think we're doing everything in the right direction, at least. Mark is asking for a 12 by 12 booth. Should not have more than 2 staff, period. Is that 12 feet, Mark, that you're talking about? When you're right, I'm assuming you're not meaning meters, 12 meters by 12 meters. Or so basic 12 square meter booth. Oh, it's a 12 meters by 12. Here, like if we use this booth here, this is 4 meters. So it's 4 meters per person. So 12 meters by 12 meters is really huge. That's 144 square meters. You can fit a lot of people in that booth. It's going to be 20 somewhat people could be in that booth at any one time. In a 12 square meter booth, yes, I would not have more than 2 staff with you in that booth at any one time to keep it efficient. Does it mean you can bring, okay, 4 by 4, yeah. Same fitting, yes. So I would have no more than 2 staff with you at any one time in the booth. Could you bring a third staff member still to the show? Absolutely. Because you can go meet in the cafeteria. You can meet other places around the show. And I do have to verify in H&H if they're implementing it also, but many of the shows are introducing these meeting zones so that if you don't have enough space in your booth, you can take that person somewhere else to sit down and talk. And that's partly why the shows are getting bigger, because we're creating more space so that you can have more of this free flow customer space. So that needs additional meeting areas. This was one of the examples of it. When you're looking, this was an example of some of the zones that are going to be set up through the shows, like here. So that you'll be able to come use this zone and host a meeting. And here's one with the plexiglass shield because it's smaller. Here's one that's bigger that doesn't need the plexiglass shield, so that you'll still be able to take it so that third staff member can go somewhere else and still talk to people. Maybe you have to run back and forth to the booth, or make sure you grab enough samples with you to take it over there, kind of a thing. Mark, you also asked about the S-Bahn and the U-Bahn trains. What do they look like? A lot of people wearing face masks. People are riding it. People are taking it. Fortunately, in Germany or in Cologne, they don't run 24 hours, so they always did good cleaning overnight. And as I said, if you're caught on that train without a face mask, it's a 250 euro fine. That's a lot of money. I think you would only make that mistake once before you realize that that's probably not the best move. So from my understanding, it's kind of like it's just not a thought to them. People are just, and that's also partly in Europe, they use public transportation. They treat it differently versus in here in Chicago, we still have cars. We're yes, people take the train to downtown, but it's not as accustomed to the public transportation system. Anyone else have questions or things that I can answer?
Yeah, if I could just add to what you said, Darren, I agree. It's probably 80%, 70-80% of trade show participants, and also the local population who take the local trams and trains. They're very widely used. And as you were saying, Darren, I think my experience is that they really enforce the rules very strictly. So I'm not sure whether it would be worthwhile to try to circumvent the rules. It will be expensive at least.
Here's a picture of, I can't see the size of this thing, but you can see again how someone's using a relatively smaller booth with one of these kind of double information counters, kind of meeting set scenarios in utilizing their space. So for folks that when you get ready to do your planning, and the other part is conversations of how to physically lay out your booth. You folks are fortunate because again, we're end of May. We can wait and have this conversation in January. And in January, we can start looking at what's the best way to lay out your booth. I'm glad to work with anyone one-on-one and kind of figure out how do we best place things, what's the best equipment, how can you keep your creative, sometimes quite often you folks have very creative displays. How can you keep your great creativity, but yet meet the guidelines and work within the function? I guess a question I want to ask all of you folks is, if anyone's willing to speak up, I guess, how do you see the industry going? How are sales? How are things from your side from looking at it? Anyone willing to speak?
Can you repeat that, please, Darren?
Yeah, sure. My question was, I guess I would ask questions to all of you. I mean, as suppliers and manufacturers and some retailers on here, how's life been for you folks? I mean, would anybody be willing to share? I mean, are things, Mark writes here in the chat, rock solid numbers, people at home looking to do things. I mean, would everyone either by nodding of heads or if willing to chime in, and do you feel that, you got a healthy industry, things are going well? I guess, does anybody have any comments on what you see or how you see the industry feeling and operating? I hope it's not that bad that everyone has to stay quiet. Oh, Tayo, hold on, you're on mute. Tayo, hold on. Unmute. Just remember, there you go. Now you're unmuted.
Okay. Things are going well. I've had a few conversations, one particular in London, England, and I mentioned h+h, which she does go every year as a buyer, and she says there's no way in hell she'll be leaving for a trade show. So that's kind of my concern is who would I be seeing? Second of all, Canada just closed down, or not Canada, EU just closed Canadian entry into the EU. I guess it's with our numbers going up right now because of the fall season. So with sort of travel bans like that, I mean, I do know that certain things, if you know, for business and for school and things like that, still people are traveling. Are these concerns, the travel bans, or are you hoping by March they'll be lifted?
Well, there's two things I'll say to that. The one is going to be, well, one to your first question about the buyer that you spoke to from the UK. And that's where ultimately, if I were to be cautious, if the show had 16,000 visitors, we know half have always been from Germany. So if we set the expectation of it will be a German first show, your EU second show, and now that the UK is technically not in the European Union, we'll kick them out for a moment, even though they're physically close, that will be the core of the attendance. So then, and then spinning outwards from there. So like, will there be some buyers from the US? My example of the hardware fair, I was shocked, but I think you'll still have some people that are just anything from, I just want to travel again. I'm desperate to travel. I need an excuse to travel. I don't have an excuse. At least now my excuse is, honey, I have to do this for work. I gotta go. So some people will say that. Some people will have legitimate business reasons. I mean, things like Creative Plus, they've got a great virtual platform going, but online is different than real. Besides them, I mean, the Creative World in Frankfurt has canceled all trade shows to the end of March. there's no trade shows happening in physical form in America, or most, yes, there's shows in China. Yes, there's some shows in the Far East. We've done shows in China. We've done shows personally in Thailand. But the fact that if we really, as I say, as exhibitors really are going to be there, I think people are going to be hungry to get back out. You'll always have someone in this. The demographics of this industry sometimes don't lend itself age-wise to being comfortable to be traveling, for what we're all told. If you're over a certain age, if you have certain medical issues, I think that's very, very true of an impact. But also I don't know, when I walk around H&H, the age demographic doesn't come across as heavily to me visually as a problem, because it's such an international and such a true B2B show versus sometimes those prosumers that are very attractive skew that demographic sometimes from the things that we'd see here, maybe at the old TNA shows, or even at Quilt Market. That category of the buyer shifts a little bit of who's actually attending the shows. To the travel bans, and this is where it gets interesting. Even the country of Germany has stated as late as the 15th of October, that was the last update, if you're coming from business, those travel bans don't exist. If you're bringing a negative, well, they don't exist if you bring a negative COVID test with you. I'll say it that way. So as long as maybe because I know you came in a few minutes late. So the beginning part was, Germany as a country has deemed, I'll repeat it just so that we're clear. The German Federal Ministry has said trade shows are essential business to their country. So they're being treated differently than other types of travel in and out of the country. We'll say tourism travel. And then from there, it gets passed to the individual states. We're in Northwest Rhine-Felden. The states then regulate what that means and how they will implement it. So in our region, they have said, normally, I believe right now it's a 10-day mandatory quarantine for anyone traveling from outside of Germany coming in, unless it's for essential business reasons. Trade shows are deemed essential business travel. You are allowed to enter the region with a negative COVID test that was from less than 48 hours ago. So meaning you take the test Monday, you get it back by Tuesday morning, you can get on your flight Tuesday afternoon, you get there by Wednesday early morning, you're good. You're in, you have a nice day, you show you're coming through immigration, you're going to show the printout, you can show the email, you can show something. You will have this negative COVID test. And then a lot of hotels are also requiring that same negative COVID test to check in to the property. So that then bypasses the typical things we hear in the media when it comes to this topic. Will it change between now and our show? Guaranteed. How many times it's going to change? Germany pretty much updates that notice about every 2 weeks. They come out with another update, and even if the updates were staying the same or they change it a little bit, but the fact that to the Germany as a country, trade shows are so essential to their economy, to the city of Cologne. We're so essential to that economy and to the region. Us and Dusseldorf are so essential to those local economies. They can't afford to shut these things down. They want to do everything in their power to keep it safe, to keep everyone healthy, but yet let them do business. And I think through the examples of what we've had happen, the show up in Dusseldorf, to the things that all the things that we went through here, it's proven that it can keep people healthy and people can be safe. Will there be some people who choose not to come? Absolutely. And that actually was a question that was emailed in that I just realized I didn't address. H+H will be implementing something called also at home. So we have a new digital platform that we just used in September on one of our digital marketing events, where we're also going to have a virtual platform for the show as well. So content from speakers that are going on will be streamed live and also can be watched on demand later. But then there's also some exciting different tools that are going to be available, some networking tools, online booth tools. What I'm waiting for is a whole menu of features. It's specifically what features will be available for the H+H show. What I'll plan to do is, once that's officially stated that these are the 5 features or we're using it all, I'll host another conversation like this, and we'll look specifically at the at-home features so that ultimately that guest who can't come still can participate, just in a different format. So they still would be able to meet with you, that if you come and have your booth, they can still meet with you in your booth. And as they say, that one's, I don't want to talk too much about it because it's only known in concept. I don't want to speak about too many different details about what our digital marketing event did and then have it not come through on this show. Because the digital marketing event that we tested on had every bells and whistles. It was the Cadillac or the Rolls Royce of events where we tested all of the features. And now all of our shows are getting some component or all of the components utilized on it based on the show means. People at home are looking at this. And yes, the last chat here. The thank you, Mark. Also agreed. Like to do this, we'll do this presentation again or a updated where I said we'll talk about the at-home software, what rules have changed as we move closer. We'll probably do this again in November or late November once those art colognes and those shows happen and we can look at what did it look like. We know what the at-home features will be, and then probably do this again in January. So that way, again, we can point to our furniture show, our candy show, so that as many times I can keep all of you feeling confident. And as we move forward, come January, you'll start knowing who's registering. We'll start seeing registration numbers. You'll have had more time to talk to your customers and say, hey, now that we're through the brunt of getting smacked in the head again with all of this, like we're kind of here in the States and in Canada, where we're at the front side of this rising problem again. But by January, will we peak and will we be going back down again? I don't know. I knock on wood. I sure as heck hope so. By February, do things look even better? Then as you know, so as we kind of start marching in, doing, as we move closer, we can make certain decisions. Things like hotel rooms, I would suggest being cautious, read your policies, know the cancellation rules around it. Sometimes the European hotels can be less friendly. Koelnmesse does have policies to support companies if you do need to cancel for some reasons. We can talk one-on-one about how that affects your particular situation. I see another question that just came in. Are you guys considering organizing something here in the States and in the future? Love the question. We're a trade show company. We're always looking for opportunities, but at this time, we're very focused on getting back to business. I mean, Koelnmesse does 80 shows a year, typically around the world. And yet we always add shows. We sometimes take away shows. I don't know. Best way to answer. Never say never, but we're very focused on just getting our shows open that we have at the moment before we can look at any kind of market expansion. We want to be careful about how we come back to business. And the trade show world here in the U.S. is shaky at its best. I just read an article this morning about here in Chicago, they're not predicting any reasonable return to trade shows until almost 22. 21 is mostly a wash for trade shows that we're not going to see shows here in Chicago until probably summer or fall is the expectation. So that even if I was to say, oh yeah, we want to do a show here in America, to pull off a show in America at the moment is no city even has a roadmap of how to get shows open yet. So it'd be very hard to project in that kind of capacity. I would say this, let's get H+H open. Let's make you all successful at H+H. And then together we can look at the rest of the world. Who knows, maybe we all want to go to Japan together, or we want to go somewhere in Asia. See who has the best markets and where is it best, or maybe it's the Middle East. For the lack of, we believe in a global nation and a global world, and whoever has the markets that have the best value for our exhibitors is where we want to be. Any other questions, things that I didn't touch on that you want more depth? Maybe I skipped over something or went too fast. I know we're approaching just about the hour mark here. I don't want to keep people, I'm kind of surprised I talked this long. I don't want to cut anyone off if you had more questions, but at the same point, I don't want to keep you longer than you need.
Darren, just one point, you were talking about hotel rooms and so on. You've probably sent the information of the agency we work with. I would assume
Yes.
TGI Travel. They're based in New York, and they can provide a lot of information and guidance as well.
Yep. If anyone needs help getting in touch with them, it's always in the bottom of all the emails that you folks get from me, along with our United travel link. We do get discounts we pass along on when people who book through United, if it's your preferred carrier or even available to you, depending on sometimes what country. If coming out of Canada, maybe not as easy, or parts of the US, sometimes they're not the easiest to get on, but it's there. And you'll find going forward, Lufthansa this month or late last month made announcements that they are actively bringing more flight capacity back between Germany and the US. They didn't specify Canada in this release. It specifically was commenting on the US, so they will be increasing capacity themselves, and with their Star Alliance partners, which is pretty much United, there'll be more flight options going forward, particularly after the new year. They see a greater on-ramp of capacity.
And as far as I know, a lot of the airlines these days are quite lenient if you have to change your flight bookings.
Yep. Yeah. Koelnmesse is friendly. The airlines are easy. Hotel rooms, double check your policies. We'll be able, unfortunately, the one thing I will say for exhibitors, most of the time I would say, look, you guys can, bide a little time, be careful. You'll have time since we will be smaller. But what's unique this year, which I should have brought up earlier when a few more people were on the call, is every 3 years, H+H coincides with our Anuga Food Tech, which puts a stress on the city. And it will even at this time. Anuga Food Tech takes pretty much all the other buildings at the fairgrounds. And typically in a year, it'll bring, is it 70,000 or 80,000 visitors, Anuga Food Tech, if I remember correctly?
Yes, around 70,000, I believe. Mm-hmm.
Right. Plus exhibiting personnel. So you might be talking 80 to 90,000 people in a normal 3-year capacity. And think that industry's been waiting 3 years for their trade show to come back. And their last day is it our setup? Hold on. Let me triple check their last day, because there's a small overlap. So that will put some stress on the overall capacity of hotel rooms. So that's the one thing I would caution against. And just making sure that you're looking probably. So their last day is?
Their last day is the 26th. The first day, our first.
The overlap.
Day.
Right. So their last day is our first day. So typically for exhibitor setup, that day for you is a little more difficult to get hotel rooms, and your prices tend to be more expensive. And then when Anuga Food Tech is gone, your hotel rates drop because you have this very large show, which is normal to Koelnmesse, where H+H, to us, it's large for this industry. It's a 16,000 person show is, I hate to say it to the city of Cologne, it kind of goes by and they don't notice, because we do shows in the neighborhoods of 50, 60, 70. The largest show we can organize in a year is 300,000 people. So we kind of have a big understanding of very large. So I would kind of look at that one. So I would say, as you're writing it, so you're saying you should book your hotel room. What I would suggest is looking into it ASAP, get your pricing, and learn your cancellation clauses, and know what it is, and then we can talk separately, or really kind of judge what's right for you or where your tolerance level is on the risk on it. Only because, again, I can't predict what will ever happen in the future. So that's that kind of when, where do you feel ready to pull that trigger? But because of Anuga Food Tech, it will put stress on the hotel rooms, particularly that setup day. And by the first day of the show, they're mostly, they're already exiting. A lot of people exit that night. So that first day of the show, you start to see it drop off already. By the second day of our show, they're 100% gone. Behind that, because any local German person is not staying the last night of the show. International guests need one more night because they can't fly out. Those kinds of things. But I would definitely, I'll put that actually in my next email briefing to remind people of the Anuga Food Tech crossover. And it's hard because it only happens once every 3 years. Any other questions? Well, I appreciate everyone joining me today. I will put out a notice. This video will be made available for all of you to watch at your leisure. I'll send out that link to everybody. So everyone knows how to get a hold of me. Please feel free to call me directly, email me, text me, whatever you need. Glad to do this, even if you want to redo parts of this one-on-one or look more particular at booth design or what does this mean for you and your stand. And the question which no one really asked, I'm told in the next maybe 2 weeks, I will get the floor plans, and particularly for the folks that are in the North American exhibit area, so we can see how it's going to affect the layout, and anyone who's independent or on their one-off locations. I'm told in the next 2 weeks, we'll start getting what this actually is, so you can see which floor you're on, who's your neighbors, and how that will all actually lay out. With that, I will sit here quietly and you guys can start logging off. And after maybe a minute, I'll just shut down the room for everyone. So if somebody wants to hang out and ask a question as people exit, please feel free to do so. If not, enjoy your afternoon. Have a great day. And I look forward to helping you return the Cologne shortly.
Thanks a lot, Darren.
Thank you for your time, everybody. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you. Goodbye, everybody.